Welcome back to the North Tonawanda Football Hall of Fame YouTube channel. Got another great guest here today from Lancaster. He's in the Baseball Hall of Fame for Western New York and also the Greater Buffalo Sports Hall of Fame, the one and the only Coach Len Jankiewicz. Coach, good to have you. Nice to see you. Nice to meet you.
Good to see you, Ed. Thanks for doing this.
Appreciate it on your end as well, too. You had quite the career, both in baseball and in football. I guess, where do we start with this? So give us a little bit of your background growing up in Western New York and how you ended up getting to Lancaster High School.
Well, let me begin by my mentor, Joe Foyle. He often reminds me, he says, have you ever considered staying longer in baseball and football? You think you might have done better. He doesn't hand out praise too often, and you really have to earn it from him. But baseball is a love of mine, certainly, and football too. But turning into football, it was certainly a privilege. Lancaster only had two coaches in 52 years. It was Joe Foyle and me. Whatever you want to think about that situation nowadays, that doesn't exist, And Coach was there. Coach Foyle was there from. Gotta say, I think he got there in 1950. So, I mean, his extended stay in Lancaster was inspirational to a lot of people. And till this day, Ed, and I know I'm going away from your question, but I got to spend some time with him on this thing, is that he's 95 years old, and he epitomizes what high school coaches are all about. I take him around to different high schools. They think of him as a rock star. They know about him, being around so long, and he's still sharp. He still exchanges little witticisms with kids that he sees. It's amazing, and I'm lucky to have him around. But being his assistant for all those years and him telling me what to do and still does, it kind of is. It's what the sport's all about. You kind of relish in the people that have been guiding you along the way, and he certainly was a guiding light, not only for me, but for other players, and his legacy extends to other assistants around the country who have taken the Foyle system of coaching.
Want to ask you, you were his assistant for 12 years. Did you ever wonder along that way, will I ever get a shot in becoming a head coach, or am I always going to be a career assistant?
I didn't want to be a head coach. We wanted him to be a head coach until he was 95. We didn't. Here's how the story went. This is an interesting story, and I hope this gets out there so people can hear it. Coach was entering his educational career and wanted to retire. And all of his assistants there, I mean, the likes of Dennis Beck, who's in the Wrestling Hall of Fame, and Kevin Carrillo should be in the Track and Field Hall of Fame. I can think of all the other people that were around. I mean, it was just a who's who in terms of assistants. Well, the rumor was that he was going to retire and stay coaching. And the only stipulation was back then is that you had to be a teacher to hold on to your coaching position. So we as a group said, well, look, none of us will put our names in for the job. We'll just, because of abstention, let him do it. And rumor has it that some malcontent from outside our group put his name in, so that the principal and the superintendent came back and said, well, look, we got to put this up for. That's my wife walking back there. We have to put this up for, election process again. And we were kind of dismayed because we wanted him to stay on. And if no one had put their name in a hat, and I'm not going to put this person's name for the world to hear again, but my colleagues know who that was. We were kind of disappointed because we wanted him to really relish in the opportunity of extending beyond. And we were happy to be assistants. Ed, let me get this straight with everybody out there looking. If you're looking at being a head coach and think that that's the only impact you have as a coach, I think you're wrong. Coaching is coaching. I don't care if you're coaching modified. I don't care if you're coaching your son. I don't care if you're coaching high school, certainly, yeah, the big day on Friday night is there. But I mean, if you truly relish coaching, you know, the bag on your chest or the badge on your chest doesn't signify how much impact you have. And we were, you know, we were very tight as a group. We wanted him to, you know, obviously respected him to the nth degree, and had a great thing going, you know. And then when that bump in the road happened, you know, then I got the job, and then, you know, things went on from there. But yeah, I was never in the, you know, pursuit of being, oh, I got to be a head coach. I mean, it's funny how things happen, you know. You kind of fall into things come your way, and you adapt to what's going on. But, you know, honestly, you know, being a head coach at Lancaster changed my life more significantly than the kids I coached, because it made you kind of follow a tradition that was made well before I got there, with even people before Coach Foyle. There, you know, there's a long legacy of great coaches that were there long before even he arrived. And, you know, he felt that he owed the program everything he could give it. And I felt the same because of people that were there before me. But that's an interesting story. And, you know, and like I said, there wasn't a coach for 52 years. I don't know whether or not that's right, wrong, or indifferent, but I should mention that because we really didn't have a lot of quote unquote turnover, right, in the program. And that kind of made things a lot easier from my end too. Becoming the athletic director later and controlling sort of where your program was going to. And again, very lucky to be there.
Did you, that first year, did you feel any pressure that you were replacing a legend and that you had to succeed immediately?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. In fact, the word got out. I didn't know how they got out or how it got out that they got the job. So I'm traveling in my car, I don't know, Ford Torino back then, whatever it was. And this guy, he's digging a ditch next to me, and I rolled down the window next to a Burger King. He says, "Hey," he says, "you got the job now, huh? Hey, good luck. You better be winning. Otherwise you'll be doing what I'm doing." And he was digging a ditch. So he was, you know, kind of, you know, it was great to have that kind of, I guess, what do you want to call it, pressure, because, and just like at North Tonawanda, football means something at Lancaster. Football means something at North Tonawanda. You wouldn't have your Hall of Fame unless it didn't have meaning within the community, within the depth of the people who have played, you know, and that's what probably makes you do what you're doing now, and Jack and all the other people involved with it. You know, it's a privilege to be involved with the game. Let's put it that way, you know, and the longer you're in it, the longer you know all the gratification from it. It's not necessarily all the wins and losses. It's all the other, whatever you want to call it, supplemental things that come along with the game that you find later in life that really are meaningful, that really are, you know, the memories of the game, the relationships, all based on that kind of stuff that make it so unique in terms of what it's all about.
Speaking of wins and losses, you amassed 143 wins, 93 losses, 2 ties over your football coaching career as head coach at Lancaster. How well did you take the victories, and how well did you take the losses?
Well, let me go back with the ties first. I remember the 2 ties, one against West Seneca West in 1988 and one in 1991 with Depew. So I remember the ties, and I probably remember every one of the 90-plus losses. I got scars on my back from all of those, and I can't remember any one of the wins. So that answers your question. I mean, the losses are much more deeper and significant. And because every coach maybe gets asked this question, and maybe that's, you can scratch this off your list. Do you have any regrets? Yeah, I got a ton of them. And they haunt me all the time, because you want to give answers to your kids for answers that they don't have as young people. They're doing what you're asking them to do. I've never blamed anybody in my career. My, 50-some year career at Lancaster, I mean, just in terms of being an AD and being affiliated with the program and some for it, because I played there myself, wasn't much of a player, but during my years, I never played my teammates, never blamed the kids. I mean, because you felt that all the time that you spent in this game, and there's one thing I'll admit. I mean, Luckily, my wife put up with me all these years. I mean, it wasn't a day out of the year. It wasn't a day out of the year that I didn't involve myself with the game, some way, shape, or form. Going to bed reading an article about offense or defense or special teams or whatever. It just enveloped your life. And here was the reason. Because you wanted to give everything back to the kids. You wanted to give them a leg up. You wanted to give them some kind of advantage. And the advantage had to be, I felt, some knowledge being expounded from you to them. All right. So they could use that against their opponent. And a lot of times when it came up short, you felt like you didn't give them everything you could have. It's almost like to parents of my kids, I always tell them, wouldn't you want to give everything to your kid? And if you felt like you shortchanged them, how would you feel? Well, I feel that every time on Friday night when we lose. So you kind of feel, less of what you should be. And it's after a while, I got to tell you, those experiences are deep, and you kind of come out of them, but you come out of them less of where you were before you got into them, because you want to give the kid a great experience. And when you separate yourself from the game, you know that those losses aren't, as monumental as they were at the time, but still at the time they are really tough to get over. I'm telling you. In
today's high school football landscape, could you be a successful football coach today?
A tough question. I don't know. It's funny too, because I'm not quite 70, but I'm pushing there, and I feel like, I can give it all the energy. But that part you said about losing, and then the part you said about, not being victorious and being so short-sighted about what the game's all about, Ed, I don't know. I think the depth of losing would be, even though you think like you knew how to get over those kind of losses, you think like all the experience you have, even being separated from the game. I'm not separated from the game. I still read articles, still, go online like everybody, and kind of feel like, you fill your mind with all these ideas, and maybe that's not what you should be doing, but you still do as a football coach. You never stop being a coach, But nowadays, this microwave society nowadays that you got to have instant results, and how people are so maybe short-sighted, they have blinders on, and they look at Helinski. There's my boy right there. Right, I got to have him. He can't be the reason that we're losing football games. It's got to be the other guy. It can't be Ed. It can't be Jack. It can't be Jimmy. It can't be whatever else. They, parents look through a prism where they idolize their own son, and understandably, that's where they are. The coach doesn't do that, Ed. I mean, the coach looks at the team. He looks at the development from time to time. And because of the society we're in right now, and, I'm pointing to my cell phone right now, that's a weapon. I mean, that's a weapon against the coach's career. He could easily pick this phone up and ruin somebody's career. Go on Facebook, go on Instagram, and post something right, wrong, or indifferent. And the credibility of somebody within, the educational range could say, you're suspended. Without due process, and it's something that coaches live with all the time. And I don't know whether or not I could. I know one thing, I couldn't be an assistant because once you're a head coach, it's tough to keep your mouth shut, and to have less of a range. So to answer your question, I guess I would like to, but I probably can't, because I know the limitations of the game right now in terms of doing what you would like to do. But because when I was coaching, if I did the things I did nowadays, I don't know whether or not I'd ever live or live with it, with the job one day. I mean, there's things that you do with kids that, maybe structurally now, that command and control, thing that you had back when I coached. I don't know, maybe more so now. I think you got to be careful. You don't know whether or not you're going to be courted, and things come out. So that's a long-winded answer, Ed, and I probably should have been more succinct, but I would like to, but I don't think I can.
Had a conversation with Armand Ace Cacciatore the other day.
Oh, yeah.
And he brought up a story about you and your staff asking permission to visit one of his practices. Was that something that you did usually, or was that just a unique situation going to see Armand and his staff at Niagara Wheatfield?
Armand is, first of all, if he's not the quintessential ambassador of football till today, I mean, give me one. I mean, it had to be the most gracious interview you've ever done. I mean, Ace is one of the most respected coaches, I mean, around ever. I mean, you know, not only in football, by the way, a great wrestling coach too, but had just great command over his kids. He had a love for the game and such a approachable personality that there was one time where our season did come to an end, and he was moving on, I think, beyond. Yeah, well, maybe it was back then where we only advanced to the sectionals. Maybe the state tournament wasn't going on then. But I wanted to see how he operated his practice. So I took the whole staff over there. And of course, Ace, you know how he is. So it was like inviting him to his house, you know, oh, do this, stay for dinner. Oh, you know, Ace, oh, coach. You know? I mean, Ace is just so welcoming. Now, he had some great athletes. I remember he had a great, oh, gosh, I think he had a quarterback, if I remember right. His name was Darling, a great quarterback who went on to do great things in college. I mean, just a super kid on his feet. I just wanted to see how the kids performed in practice and so forth. And, yeah, I mean, our coaches maybe didn't take notes, but they wanted to see how things were there because they were a great offensive team. You know, they advanced the ball pretty well and did some things on defense too. We wanted to see, but again, Ace he was worth the trip, no matter if his team wasn't worthwhile to see.
You, during your tenure at Lancaster, had 6 league titles, 9 appearances in the Section 6 championships. You ever think back, maybe today or last week or last month, and reminisce about those high school years and what you accomplished?
Yeah, there weren't enough. It's terrible. I mean, what you said is terrible in the 25 career. I mean, it was just, these are things I regret. I wanted to look at, I've established a record that nobody has equaled yet. I've lost more at Rich Stadium than anybody. I've lost more games in sectional title games than anybody in history. Hello, the world, you hear that? Me. Len Jankiewicz now admits I'm terrible, all right, because I haven't given the kids what they should have received. Those are championship rings. I mean, when I go on the floor, I mean, poor Coach Foyle was with me. I'll count 10 times we were there in that length of 26 years. Poor Coach lost, I think at the time when Maryville had a real good team. Tony Scanzuza was a running back. You know, maybe these guys' names doesn't ring a bell, but Maryville had a tremendous. Gary Braun was a coach back then, and then they beat us. Coach Foyle was the assistant at the time. This was in '85, I believe, and our quarterback had a concussion. Our starting quarterback was a great kid. Second play of the game goes down. Oh gosh, look out! You know, and we did lose a tight game with Maryville, but a few years later I came back, and I think '88. I think we won there, and I didn't win it again until I think in '99. And there were times when, understandably, we lost to the state champion. The person we lost, or the team we lost to at the stadium, had moved on, and you know, got a state championship. One game that, okay, one of the losses I'll remember is that the Jamestown team, one of Wally Hucknall's 3 state championship teams, we lost. Oh God, we lost 9-7, and this genius of a coach here thinks, oh, we're gonna kick a field goal to win 10-9. I get in the huddle with my quarterback Andy Kufel, who now is the assistant superintendent of Lancaster. And I said, Andy, do you think you can hit Andre in a little seek route, a little seek route out of the back? Oh yeah, coach, no problem. I'll get that done. Right. So I'm leaving the huddle. I'm thinking, you're such an idiot. So what happens now? This is going down to like the last 2 minutes of the game. That pass gets intercepted in the red zone, and we had the chance to beat, my buddy, Jamestown, Wally Hucknall, 10-9. And is because of my decision to kind of, looking into his eyes and, just getting a first down and maybe going for the touchdown rather than the field. And we had a pretty good field goal kicker. Why you do those kind of things, Ed, still to this day, when I see Andy, who is now an administrator at Lancaster, we both shake our head and say, we lost the ring. We lost the chance of the ring. So going back to, remember your earlier comment about wins and losses? Do losses hurt you? They haunt you. They haunt you, and they're difficult.
What do you recall about your battles against North Tonawanda? You had some good ones over the years.
Yeah, they've always, I think North Tonawanda and Lancaster had a very similar socio-economic background, blue-collar people. I mean, maybe now things have changed a little bit. I mean, Lancaster has become more, bigger. It's just buildings seem like houses are going up every day. And the number discrepancy has separated a little bit, but back then, it seemed like to me, if you could kind of, become a similar community who appreciated the game and had a lot of, similar blue collar people that came home at 5 o'clock after a tough work day and, got up the next day and did the same thing. I think both communities were about the same. They both valued football. They both had a very strong, tradition that I inherited, just like the coaches at North Tonawanda inherited. And, a great field to play on. Better Field was one of my favorites to go on. It just right in the middle of a neighborhood. What better place to play a football game? And, Lancaster, very similar there. So, hard hitting, always, you're in for a game. And if I can remember too, aside from a few games that were kind of lopsided, I think most of them were pretty tight, and you never knew who might come out being a victor. And there's always a big game and probably both people's schedules. And by the way, over the years, garnered a very good relationship with Dave Anastasi and Eric Yancey, and people that took over the program and, became close friends of mine and so forth, and respected them beyond the game too.
You mentioned Anastasi and Yancey. In the coaching fraternity in Western New York, were there other coaches that you became close with as well too, or picked each other's brains or admired, or for lack of a better way to describe this question to you?
Well, here's the story. First of all, everybody knows about Lancaster at the Pew. It's been kind of like the Army-Navy, North Tonawanda game, and Frank Constantino and Joe Foyle were very close. Joe Foyle was a godfather to one of Frank Constantino's kids. Not many people know that. And, Frank certainly has passed. But how about this? Frank retires in 1986, I believe, all right? Well, he fills out a place going to the Pew because, all right, the living legend comes back to the Pew and everybody thinks like Frank is still controlling the team. So where does he go? Lancaster. So Frank was on my sidelines for a little while, and he put in the belly option with one of my quarterbacks who was an AD prior to Eric Rupp being the AD and Al Brian Wild. And I think back in '88, I think when we were playing North Tonawanda, I think for the championship, here's Frank Constantino on my sideline coaching my quarterback. And, I loved him. He was one of those guys that just revered him so much. And even though, bitter rivals for 48 minutes a year, best friends for the other time, and Frank Constantino ranks right up there along with my head coaches being two of the phenomenal people, not only coaches, but also people in the community. Gene Masters, just a tremendous influence. Even when he retired, he drove over in his motorcycle. I saw him in that corner of my eye. I started jogging over to him and he rode off. And I called him after. I says, Gene, why don't you just come to practice? Nah, just wanted to see what you're doing from afar. And he rode away. John Fowler was a good friend of mine. He and I kind of took over the reins, and he after Joe Shiflett, and I after Joe Foyle at about the same year. And we became AD, so we're pretty friendly too. And John's untimely passing a couple of years ago was really heartfelt for me because he was a great friend. And, what a phenomenal career he had. But those are just a few. And I mean, right now, because I'm involved with recruiting with the Western New York Football Alliance, we do a lot of things with Western New York football. I know a lot of the young coaches now, and believe me, the game's in great hands. There's a lot of great young people out there that know how to control social media, and how to handle, the youth nowadays where, I believe the kids haven't changed, but certainly things around us have, to the point where I think you have to adjust, or otherwise you're not going to survive in this environment. But the game's still the same, even though we try to structure it a little bit differently. The game is still played on a 100-yard field, and it's got 4 downs to get a first down, and it's still the tough team that wins at the end. So those kind of things are there. But those people in my life, I could go on and on about other people you haven't mentioned yet. Even Paul Fitzpatrick from time, a good friend of mine that we had games with, just because we were friendly. Time in Lancaster had time at St. Jude. If you thought they're small, they were not small. I mean, they played teams outside of Western New York tougher than all out. Paul Fitzpatrick was just the greatest motivator of kids. If some of you guys agree with me out there, I don't think you're wrong for doing that. Just tremendous. Bobby O'Connor from St. Joe's, we played. Plenty of influences out there in Western New York when I was there, and I kind of felt privileged to be around a lot of these great minds.
You were the football coach, you became the athletic director in '93. You were the baseball coach. How did you juggle that? And also you worked in education. So how did you juggle all that on one side and your personal life on the other side?
Well, you didn't have much of a personal life. Luckily, you had a wife to put up with me. We weren't blessed to have kids, but I always tell people we had 2,000 kids at school that never came home with us every night, But we managed. I have a great understanding counterpart of a wife, Robin, who I love dearly, and she loved the kids that I love dearly too. And I think you can't exist nowadays without having a spouse that understands the drive and it takes to do a program. I can't underestimate how much time, first of all, being a football coach and an AD takes out of your life. I mean, it's just, it's not necessarily decision-making that really counts. It is being visible and being there when things need to be done is what the value of an AD is. It's things always seem to happen on the downside when athletic directors aren't present. Let me leave it that way. I mean, if you're present and you're around and you're observing things seem to have a way of saying, oh, I guess I can't do it now. You got the guy watching. All right. But if you disappear, you're not witnessing what's going on. And usually it's some kind of social interaction that kind of, goes wrong. It can go sideways pretty quick. And, with the school district, what's more visible than an athletic program? I mean, everything that goes on educationally is behind a locked door in a classroom. And until the test scores are posted, nobody knows what goes on. But for a local high school team, you know what the final score is, you know how things are going. And likewise for the swim team, for the cross-country team or whatever else. And we're a big school and we have a lot of things going on. So, it's difficult, but if you love what you're doing, and if you do love what you're doing, that means everything. It's not like the winning, certainly is part of it too. But if you love what you're doing, I think that's really the key of what's going on. And certainly I love coaching kids. I love being with them. And I love the privilege of being the athletic director at a school that values athletics. And, We expanded our programs, expanded the girls' programs, which I'm really particularly proud of. And we had a field house put up, and a lot of land that got extended that still is there now. So our footprint for athletics was expanded, and I think the kids from our district benefited from the decisions our voters made in terms of making the facility better for them, and it continues to do that now.
You're one of the very few schools that still maintains natural grass as a football field. Will that ever change?
I mentioned this 20 years ago and said that the only school in I guess in Western Europe, I think there's 3 schools now that maybe do not have turf, and 2 of them are considering turf, and 1 isn't, and the one that isn't is Lancaster. I think we're going to be the sole school probably in Western New York and maybe in this side of the state that doesn't have a turf field. I guess it would be an advantage, because if you had a youngster that has to play Lancaster, I got to play that stupid Lancaster again. Guess what? Sue and I have to go out and buy a little youngster, cleats for the grass, that kind of thing. So oddly enough, maybe it's an advantage for Lancaster, because now, there's technically, I think you can wear the same kind of footwear for artificial turf for natural turf. But and by the way, our grounds crew does a particularly great job of keeping that field immaculate. But it is grass, and it does get wet, and it does have certain characteristics that make kids feel like, ooh, I can't make the same cut going downhill as I could on my field at home. So maybe it is a little bit of advantage. We feel still good. And oddly enough, too, I used to have little arguments with our superintendents that I love. One isn't with us this present day that we miss so dearly. And I said, Dr. Girardi, look at, how about this? How about 50% of the NFL teams don't have turf either? And a lot of people out there think, wait a minute, the Buffalo Bills have a turf field. You're telling me that half the fields in the country for the NFL are regular turf? Yes. Yes. How about the Pittsburgh Steelers? How about a Northern team? Now, I didn't win an argument with my superintendent. I never did. But at least I keep them quiet for a little bit, because for a while, Notre Dame, I remember visiting Notre Dame's campus and, seeing touchdown Jesus and actually walking in the end zone. And I looked down at, my God, it's like bristly turf, but it's regular turf. I go, wait a minute, Notre Dame, and I know they since changed, but oddly enough, things sometimes come around, and I know certain cultivars of grass become more. We have Cornell University in our backyard over here. They're probably the epicenter of growing natural turf. And I don't want to get into that argument here when I had it with my administrators too, but we wanted to keep this turf as tight as we could, give it all the advantages of artificial turf, but keep it quote unquote safer. Because, there's all kinds of the downside of, your artificial turf head, because you have to replace it, number one. There were some things about, I don't know whether or not it was carcinogenous things and the makeup of it, the pellets and all that stuff that had to be, canceled by the manufacturer, certainly. But, the benefits of an artificial turf are obvious, and certainly weather conditions. But we kind of feel with the limited use our football field gets, it doesn't get any lacrosse, it doesn't get any soccer, it doesn't get any other sport on there, because it's a bandbox. It's old and it's tight. The only field on there, the only team performing on there is a football team. So it's not going to get a lot of games throughout the year. And because it's grandfathered, because it was created in the 60s, Ed, you're about as close to the field as you are right now. All to me. You're about 6 feet away, so you could throw tomatoes at that coach for calling the same play that didn't work last week, and make all those comments heard, because you're almost like in a wrestling ring. Yeah, you're right on top. What an experience for the person watching a football game. You're really close to it.
I want to digress just for a moment. You were quite the high school baseball player. You were drafted by the Pittsburgh Pirates, but opted to go to college instead. You ever think about the days that maybe you could have been playing on the same field in Pittsburgh with Willie Stargell and Roberto Clemente, and when the Pirates were making a run in the 70s?
You know, funny you mention that too. I had a final trial with them. I went to Forbes Field, and we had I don't know what you want to call it, a group of people had a select tryout at Forbes Field, and here I am. I mean, you know, what are you now, 16 years old or 17 years old? It's probably 16 at the time, and you're on the same field in the dugout with the Pirates there, you know, and, you know, Clemente, Stargell, whatever, you know, on that same field. And we went to Forbes Field, and, you know, you went through your routine, whatever else, and went through it. It was, you never appreciate the moment, Ed, when you're young. You kind of like travel through the moment until you look back on time, you know, you go, why didn't I savor the moment? You never do. You kind of, you know, look on it as, oh, just another get together with kids, you know. But I tell people this: in the springtime, I love baseball. In the fall, I love football. I mean, it's just one of those things. You fall asleep with your baseball glove in your bedpost. That was me, you know. And in the fall, oh, you love tossing the football around. Or for me, I was a fat old lineman, you know, and I just love knocking around the other guys. I wasn't a skill guy. And nowadays you can't call linemen non-skilled because they get upset at you. But back then we weren't much of a bunch of fat old kids that never got prom dates, you know, and just loved being on a football field in the fall, you know. And anyway, but yeah, I look back in those days. I had a very nice, you know, time young in baseball, and then, you know, played, you know, amateur wise in the city of Buffalo and around town, so forth, and just extended my time until I think I was maybe 33 or 34 years old, and I finally gave up the game because the ball became too small to hit.
Looking back at your career, would you do anything different?
Knowing what I know now, yeah, things a lot differently. But back then, I can't, you know, I think people always say that, but probably if you had to do it over again, you probably wouldn't, because you're you. I mean, you have a lot of knowledge up there. It goes back to that question you asked before, Ed, about could you coach today? And you think like, yeah, I got this sense that, yeah, this is what I would do. This is how I would defend this. This is how I would create points. But here's what people forget, Ed. You're still the same person. You still have the same brain you had when you're a lot older now and probably a little bit more demented, but you have the same makeup. So what's to say that all of a sudden now you're going to become coaching differently? You probably will not, even though you have great intention. You know, it begs the question why people want to do things over again when you're kind of quote unquote recycled. I mean, you see that in coaches nowadays. You see coaches from the NFL going back into college. You know, you see maybe some high school coaches maybe coming back for a stint or two, coming back to high school. And I bet if you asked them that same question, I think they'd probably have the answer I gave you. You know, it's not like you think you would do different, you know, you have more information coming into it, but because you're the same person, you'll find out that you're not going to make any different decisions, because the decisions you made before when you're younger will probably be the same decisions you'll make now, because that's your inner makeup. That's what decides what goes on. I kind of think that's how people are. They think they can make better decisions, but you know what? Given the same conditions going back, I still think I'd make those stupid decisions on 4th and 1 probably that I made, you know, back then again.
Getting out on the street on a day-to-day basis, when you encounter people, how do they greet you?
How do they greet me? Well, you know, if you're talking about, you know, coaches, or if you talk about players that have played for me, there's a certain way to do that. I mean, I'm just like everybody else. Taking the garbage out on Wednesday, you know, mowing your lawn on Sunday, you know, and trying not to become not to become a nuisance in the wintertime and shovel somebody's driveway so he doesn't think I'm a curmudgeon. But the difference is when you see high school kids that you've coached before, Ed, that's the difference. It's almost like it's an instant time change so that you're back to the time that you were with them. I think coaches will respect what I'm saying now, is that every time you shake a hand or hug a kid that you coached before, it's like you're back to the future, just like that movie. You hopped in the DeLorean, you closed the door, and you're back in that time zone again. And you know what? The kids remember some great things. They'll expound something. Hey, remember this? And I kind of forget that. But to them, much like coaches said, kids remember moments. They don't remember scores. They don't remember how you taught them to run a power play. They don't remember, that defensive stunt you taught them. They remember moments in the locker room, on the field, or whatever else that kind of are etched in their heart, and they kind of remind you about that. And so I think it's lessons to the coach, and even for the young ones out there too, don't think that, that your scheme is going to be remembered by generations of the players you have. They're not going to remember anything you're teaching them football-wise. They're going to remember the relationship you had with them and the experiences that made the most in their lives. And, maybe because of the structure that football gave them, they find some relationship in terms of what they're doing now in life because of the structure they got, that everything is planned out, and a lot of the time in life, nothing is as structured as football, as you know. I mean, you know what you're doing on Monday, you know what you're doing on Tuesday, you know what you're doing on Wednesday. That structure in lives right now doesn't happen. Think about that in the modern day life. I mean, how often do parents and kids sit down and have a meal? I mean, it's just like both parents are working. This guy's got to be taking to practice. Hey, this girl's got to go to dance, recital here. And I got cheerleading practice. Oh no, we're never together, but football, you know what you're doing. And those kind of structured times, I think, are valuable.
You've had a great career. How would you like to be remembered?
Well, certainly I told you about, let's forget some of the losses that I endangered a lot of people with here. All I want to be, don't remember me. Don't remember me at all. I mean, forget about me. Forget about, my career. Forget about me as a person. Just remember the kids I coached. Remember the program that I coached in, so that it's there for people to experience from. I mean, Ed, I've been around long enough to know that a good friend of mine that we're doing a banquet for in the next 3 weeks, symbolically is probably one of the most influential people of high school football of all time. And I don't think anybody that views this thing would disagree that his name is Dick Gallagher. He was the guru of high school sports for almost 4 decades, had a banquet that, if memory serves me right, would have gone on. This could have been the 38th or 39th year. That symbolically was the end of the football season, that kind of awarded and honored the kids that did all these great things throughout the football season, but was the culmination of his effort of watching all the goings on of football, and it's part of giving back. And of course, his job related in the field of alcoholism and drug abuse and substance abuse, whatever else, kind of was the perfect segue into football, because obviously there's some connection there and kids need help. But the point I'd bring about Dick Gallagher is that even he is disappearing from the landscape, even though his legacy isn't. But I found out that, some people have to be reminded about him. And gosh, I mean, it was just last June we lost him. So it's so, it's so fleeting, I mean, somebody's career, whatever else you think like is going to last forever because you're in some Hall of Fame or whatever, and you see your picture on the wall. People are in the now. We talked about the microwave society here. What have you done for me right now? Ask Shawn McDermott how much he's valued. It's what he did in the last game. you know, and it's what you have done for me lately that really counts. It shouldn't be like that, but I think that's the reality of the situation. And for my part, I think, remember the kids I coached, and hopefully they're better people for it. And certainly the thing that's most dear to me is the program I'm from, because I know it's the genesis of a lot of good things that happen. We talked about all the good things that football can create for you. And I kind of think more so than ever, football is really needed in this society, with the idea of delayed gratification and all this stuff. It's not immediate. It's all the things that's contrary to modern day society. You've got to work for 365 days a year, Ed, for 10 games.
I want to give you one last final thought. We've talked a lot about different subjects. What haven't I brought up that you'd like to talk about?
Well, I think you've covered everything. And I think, maybe what I tried to point out to you right now, how important the game of football is for society. I mean, because of what it's all about. We try to change it for safety's sake, but the rudiments of what makes it the standard for athletics, the love of the game, how unilaterally has NFL become like the fabric of Sunday? And I kind of think it starts in high school football, where parents look at kids and say, boy, that Ed Helinski, man, from a junior to a senior, look how he matured. Well, maybe because he was under duress and under all this pressure, and he learned to sustain through it and learned to stay calm, and look, he became a better person for it. Moms know that more than dads, and all the decision making that you got to make behind closed doors. And Ed, you know this from the time at North Tonawanda, and I'm sure the other people in the Hall of Fame know, nothing is as important to a high school football team as that football locker room. You grow up in it. The appreciation that goes on in there. Everybody knows everybody. Your players know everybody. You think they don't? They know everybody. They know the good things, the bad things. There's no secrets in there. And that place, I think, is still, even though kids probably treat it a little bit differently than when I played or you played, but it's really the core of what football is all about, and how they, there's no guarantees, right? No win guaranteed. You hope that you win all of them, but sometimes you do the best you can, and there's no guaranteed results. Boy, there's a lot of similarity in life with that.
Coach Len Jankiewicz, Hall of Famer Len Jankiewicz, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a wonderful conversation that we've had. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for giving your thoughts and insights on different subjects. I wish you well. I wish you good health, and thank you once again.
Thanks again for the Hall of Fame committee, and go Jacks, right?
Go Jacks. Absolutely.